of the high god. This work will restrict itself to the high god of the Toba Batak. However, we cannot leave undiscussed what was said by some others about the belief in the high god in general. It is beyond the scope of this work to deal with the numerous works on the with this with the numerous works on what is often called primitive monotheism. From a historical point of view, these works, especially publications of Lang and Father William Smith, are valuable because they have truly done away with the animistic theory, which was generally accepted before. It is clearly demonstrated in a great general number of cases that the belief in the high god was found in with those peoples which had a more primitive economical system and which according to this theory were considered to live in the animistic stage. This is a very controversial question which in our opinion must be explained by the fact that the high god found in the religions of many primitive people was identified with the creator of the Christian religion. On account of this, especially Father Smith and his followers have omitted to operate from within. The facts were adjusted to their preconceived ideas. If they had dug into the remains of life of the primitive peoples, is unbiased frame of mind, and as deeply as possible, they will have discovered that the primitive, as Frick stated, lebt in einem komplexen Dasein, dessen Ganzheit ihm deutlich ist, so dass weniger als wir spezialistisch und exakt vorgeht, dafür aber mehr als wir unter der Anleitung von Totalitätsgefühl, unter der Beachtung kommunizierender Einflüsse zwischen sehr verschiedenen Erscheinungen, also mit einer viel geschlosseneren, innerhalb seiner Grenzen großzügigen Weltgefühl und Weltbild. Das Gesetz der Partizipation, das Levi Bull herausgearbeitet hat, ist der formelhafte Ausdruck dafür, wie sich diese Tatsache dem abstrahierenden Denken der europäischen Beobachters darstellt. For this reason, the high god, as the creator of the universe, cannot be anything else to the primitive, but a totality of which good as well as evil, unity as well as multiplicity, etc. are parts. It's therefore not necessary to speak of a degeneration in primitive religion. Another conception, which in our opinion is wrong and which has caused a good deal of controversy, is that the high god found with the primitive peoples is said to be a deus otiosus. In this conception, it ought to be found in the brilliant treatise by Sir Blanc, the high god, as Urheber, after having completed everything, has withdrawn to heaven, under the earth, etc., without hardly taking any further care of men. As said above, it is not our intention to examine the numerous controversies which have presented themselves with respect to the belief in the high god. Neither is there, in our opinion, any reason to occupy ourselves with the works on Indonesia in which this belief is mentioned, because a discussion of these works would involve us again in the innumerable problems and controversies connected with the interpretation of the high god. We are of opinion that we had better restrict ourselves to descriptions of two authors, an ethnologist, K.T.H. Boyce, and a historian of religions, G. V. D. Liu, because we think they have rather penetrated into the problem. In a number of publications, press draws our attention orientation to the belief in the high god of the primitive peoples in general. We mainly owe our insight into the unity of what is usually differentiated in animism, dynamism, and the belief in the high god to this energetic scholar. He rejects Taylor's hypothesis as inadequate to the explanation of the belief in a survivor after death. According to Proust, we must den toten in demselben Sinnen, den toten, den toten in deselben Sinne auffassen. Wie in die sogenannte Machttheorie auf die Erscheinungen im Glauben der Naturvölker anwendet, Glauben und Mystik P. 19. After an analysis bearing testimony to a critical mind, he concludes that the deceased form part of all the beings and things which, in the conception of the primitive peoples, can exercise a supernatural power. Moreover, he argues that the way in which the communication between the deceased and man is achieved is the same as that in which the relations between man and the supernatural powers are brought about. After having considered the deceased in the light of the power theory, Peirce demonstrates the oneness of the difficult powers and the high God. To do this, Söderblom's theory must first be rejected. To him, the high God is more than whoever. He therefore rejects Söderblom's theory, which reduces the supreme being to a mere answer to the question of the origin of the world, of man, etc. As Peirce says, this is a treatment based on the Erkantist theory, and therefore inacceptable. It may It may be true that the high God is also seen as the creator of the world and as the origin of the cult rites, etc. But this whoevership is not essential. It must be looked upon upon it must be looked in it must be looked upon in its quality of embodiment of cosmic totality and order. For this reason, the existence of the belief in the high God cannot be based on logic thinking and wrestling with the problems. We must try to understand the soul of the primitive and ask, in erforderte die Lebensvorsorge mit übernatürlichen Mitteln vor das Vorhandensein einer höchsten Gottheit for essentiality. For essentially, Peirce continues, primitive man aims at prosperity in the fullest sense of the word. In the fullest sense of the word. Then, Peirce points at the tendency of the primitive peoples to make the sacredness of the of the religious tradition a reality by an appeal to the ancestors. These ancestors are powerful beings who have instituted the sacred rites and customs. We feel wichtiger für die Glauben war es aber, wurde ieder erleuchtet zu werden, dass der von der Vorfahren eingeführte Glauben und die Kulte, die so unendlich wichtig für das Gedeihen der Menschen empfunden wurden, direkt eine Weltordnung umschlossen, die den Vorfahren in der Urzeit offenbart wurde. Dazu braucht man ein höchstes Wesen, das eine solche Weltordnung verkörpert. Man hat den Naturvölkern immer Unrecht getan, indem man annahm, dass sie durch ihre Glaubenserlebnisse gegenüber den Ursaligen Einzelmachten Verlauf befriedigt seien. All dieses Einzelne erforderte von vornherein eine Synthese, und diese war die Harmonie der Welt des Gesetzes als Ganzes, soweit das eigene Gedeihen der Menschen in Frage kam. Sie erlebten daher schon auf ganz früher Stufe das Vorhandensein eines höchsten, über allen stehenden Wesens, das ihnen den Kult, die, die richtige Behandlung gegenüber den Einzelmachten gab. Dadurch kam erst das Gleichgewicht in der Welt, das sie brauchten, einen Gott, dass sie täglich um seine Hilfe baten. Wie wir das bei einem Gott tun, was für sie unnötig, dass ihre Gedanken auf ihr Verhältnis zu den einzelnen Machten gerichtet waren. Das höchste Wesen bildete nur die Grundlage dafür. So far, Preuss, who in our opinion succeeded indeed in penetrating into the religion psyche of primitive man by this genetical explanation of the belief in the supreme being. We must, however, raise the following objection against his theory. Within the essential oneness, Preuss draws a strict dividing line between the powers and the high God, although his material does not allow it. By this, he has to a certain extent unconsciously affirmed Smith's degeneration theory. Preuss argues that, owing to his wealth and value, this God is not worshipped, that he is good and righteous because he has made everything for the good of men. That he is also considered to be the cause of death is due to the fact that he is looked upon as the representation of cosmic totality and order. Idem P42. Speaking idem P50 SQ about the Anherung, the Houston, Gotha, and the cult. However, he considers them to be related with the moon, the winds, the rains, etc. However, this to explain this, Preuss says the following: Es ist dabei gar nicht nötig, an einer Entwicklung vom weltenfernen unbestimmten höchsten Wesen zu dieser beschränkten Auffassung als Mond zu denken. Der sophrische Glauben kann sehr wohl vornherein die immanente Sehnsucht nach der zusammenfassenden Weltharmonie, wie sie für die übernatürliche Lebensfürsorge notwendig ist, mit einem wunderbar anmutenden Naturding Vernunft haben. We don't believe the explanation to be satisfactory. In our opinion, this phenomenon can only be explained when looked upon against the background of the mystical experience of the primitive mentality to which Boyce himself had repeatedly pointed. For if his argumentation, idem P35, is correct that the primitive man, owing to this mythical experience, conceives a part as a whole, should it not following that each of the powers which are parts of messengers of the high God, idem P27, is considered to be the high God himself. Therefore, primitive man does not draw the dividing line mentioned, but he experiences the different powers as aspects of the high God. This implies that, as a totality, the high God is not only a deus or theosus, but also a dynamic God, apprehended in the moon, the winds, etc., and comprising in his being good as well as evil, oneness as well as multiplicity. In two treatises of practically the same purport, Van der Leeuw pays attention to the highest beings of the primitives. He supports Preuss' theory for the greater part. In the first volume of his the God the gods diensten the wereld. We read the following. It is quite impossible to deny as myths does a mythological character to the worship of the high god. On the contrary, the few the the very important function which gives them a right to a structure of their own in the totality of primitive religion is owing to the very fact that in mythical primeval times they did something with which has been regularly repeating itself. The creation of formation of all things existing is also such a primeval action which continually repeats itself through the rites. The highest beings have the function of antecedents, guarantors of the present reality and its continuous repetition. For this reason, the belief in the highest beings is practically the same as that which we may call a belief in a world order. By this belief, accident or arbitrariness is excluded, but it is a belief in powers in the background, has the relatively small place given to the highest beings in the cult. We see that he, like Bryce, also looked upon the supreme being as a deus or theosus, although this great phenomenologist has written on the participating way of thinking in an unequaled, brilliant manner. The quote as a sample, the, to quote an example, when in his book The Primitive Mens and the Religi, p. 38 SQ, he argues that primitive man does not think exclusively or additively, that in his connection a human being can be in the upper world, in the underworld, as well as in his grave at the same time. Why then cannot the same be accepted of the incorporator of the world order? If the powers must be looked upon as messengers of the supreme being, and if they and if in the pre, and if in primitive mentality representation is equal to identity, p. 42. Is there any reason for asserting that the supreme being is only a power in the background? That is why our objection against Bryce also remains in force with regard to van der Leeuw.